What's on? So basically for today's video, I'm gonna be like making like a review video of like how I felt about like this past vacation I went on and like what some of my favorite days on the trip were, least favorite days, and then also gonna be comparing it to like the other road trips I did. I'm also gonna be kind of going over some things I wish I had done differently and some things I think were done pretty well. So basically, the first day that I really liked on this trip, like one of my favorite days on the trip, was the day that I did whitewater rafting and zip lining and all that. I would say that that was probably my ultimate favorite day that I had on this trip. It was honestly better than like any of the other whitewater rafting that I did in the past, and then also the zip line was the best zip lining experience I've ever done. So not only that, but like I didn't have to do a whole lot of driving that day. The only driving I had to do was like going to the hotel to like some of those places, which were like all like kind of within like 10-minute drives. So didn't have to do a whole lot of driving that day. So it was nice kind of getting to settle in the area, and went to like some pizza place afterward in town. So that was definitely my favorite day on the trip because of how awesome the whitewater rafting and ziplining were. So another day that I really liked on this trip, probably my second favorite day on this trip, was the day that I went whale watching and then did the Beehive Trail and some like ocean walk hike. So the whale watching kind of did make me nauseous, but it was really nice getting to do that for like the first time. And then my favorite part of the day was probably the second half of the day whenever I did like the Beehive Trail, getting to climb the ladders, and was kind of like a similar throwing experience, hiking experience. So like whenever I did the Angel's Landing last year, also got to see this really nice beach too that day. Ended up like getting to have a nice evening in Bar Harbor. So and then basically like my third favorite day that I had on this trip was the day that I spent at Niagara Falls, like the full day that I had there. I didn't have to do any driving at all. It was pretty much walking that entire day, just like walking to and from places. So there was like no driving at all that day. That was really nice. It was really cool getting to like go like kind of like closer up to the falls too, getting to get a view of like the main area of the falls, and then some really nice views at night of the waterfalls all lit up. And then those 3 days were probably my favorite days I had on the trip. So some of my least favorite days on the trip, like they weren't bad days. None of these days were bad, but just like the days that weren't quite as great as like some of the other ones. So I would say it was the day that I left like Niagara Falls and was kind of traveling through Canada, getting back into the US. Toronto was nice getting to see for like the first time, but it was like really hot out there whenever I visited, and there was just a lot of traffic like going in and out of the city too. Also didn't have time to like go and do the one tower that I was hoping to be able to do. It's just a really long line that day, and it wouldn't have fit really well with like the rest of the schedule that I had for the trip too. So there were still some good moments throughout that day too, even though it was like my least favorite day on the trip. I got to like eat this like pretty nice restaurant whenever like I got back to like into Michigan, and got to try some nice like fish and chips there. And it was also a pretty nice evening getting to sit at the dock too. So there were still some good moments that day, but that was probably my least favorite day on this trip. So another day that I had that I feel like wasn't quite as good as some of the other days was the day that I was like traveling through New Hampshire and Vermont. I mean, I still enjoy getting to see the places I did that day, but I just feel like they weren't quite as good as like some of the other stuff that I saw on the trip. And I mean, this one city that I saw in like New Hampshire, I think it was like Manchester, New Hampshire. I feel like it was pretty underwhelming, but to be fair, it wasn't like a big city, so it was still nice getting to kind of travel through those two states. It was mostly a traveling day that day too. So probably the last day that I would say like was one of my least favorite days on this trip was the very first day I had on the trip. That day was mostly like a traveling day and all that, and kind of just getting settled in on the trip too. And also it was pretty hot out that day, maybe not as hot as like the Toronto day, but still was a pretty hot day outside. But I still really did enjoy getting to see Indianapolis and Cincinnati for the first time, even though it was kind of hot whenever like I first got to Indianapolis. It did cool down once I like got to Cincinnati though later in the evening, but that was probably my like for least favorite day on the trip. But it still ended up like being a really good day though. Even though like these days were like some of my least favorites out of the days on the trip, they still had a lot of good moments throughout them, and I still enjoyed pretty much every day I had on this trip. So now I'm gonna be comparing this road trip to like the ones I did in the past, like 2022 and 2021. So I'm gonna be starting off with like the things I like better about this road trip compared to like both of them. So the first thing that I liked a lot more about this trip, like it was a longer trip than any of the road trips I did in the past. This trip was like an 18-day long trip. The trip that I did in 2021 was like 14 days. It was a little bit longer than 2022. 2022 was like 13 days, so this was like the longest of the free trips. And not just that, but there was like more days I was able to like kind of settle in at the same place and like either the road trips in the past. I mean, 2022 did have like a good number of days where I was able to settle in at the same like place, same area, but this trip had more than 2022 did. Whenever I like did the whitewater rafting, that was like a day that I got to spend like fully there, not trying to drive that much. Also, whenever I went to Shenandoah, I got to stay there for 2 nights. Also, like whenever I went to Acadia, I got to stay at the same place like for a couple of nights, and then Niagara Falls as well. So I got to have like a good number of times where I was able to kind of just stay in like the same area. And pretty much throughout this trip there was like less driving that I was doing per day on average than like either of the road trips. I would say like the day like road trip that had like the most driving per day was 2021 for sure, but I feel like this one had even less driving per day than 2022 even. So that was another thing I really liked about this road trip, like the least amount of driving that I was doing on average per day. I also thought the rafting experience I did on this trip was better than the 2022 Colorado one. And in 2021, I didn't even get to go whitewater rafting on that trip. So, and then not just that, but like on this trip, I got to go ziplining twice. I didn't go ziplining at all on the 2022 or 2021 trip. So, in the ziplining experience I had, like on like both the places, especially the New River Gorge place, was really amazing. So, I got to experience like more variety on this trip that compared to like the 2022 road trip, and I would even say maybe even a little bit more in the 2021 road trip. I got to like experience like days of like just staying in cities like in New York, and then days where I was like in a mountain area like New River Gorge and Shenandoah, and then I had days where I like got to experience being at the beach, and then a lot of waterfalls on this trip too. So I feel like this trip had a lot of variety. Not just that, but like I got to have like more beach visits on this trip than like I did on the 2021 trip. I only got to like go to the beach like I think one time throughout that trip. It was a pretty nice beach experience, and it was nice getting to touch the Pacific Ocean for the first time, but I feel like this trip allowed me to have better experiences like with the beach and all that. So 2022 I didn't get to have a beach experience. It was still a really awesome trip, but that was like one thing that that road trip did lack, was like not getting to have like a beach experience on that trip. So not only did this trip have better like beach experiences like than any other road trip, but this road trip also had like the best city experiences of the three. Like I got to like see cities like New York, Boston, Philadelphia. I got to see DC. I also got to check out Toronto for the first time, which is like my first time seeing a major city in like a different country as well, and got to like see Milwaukee, and I even got to go back to Chicago again towards the end of the trip. So this trip definitely had the best city experiences of the free trips. So another thing that I really liked about this trip is throughout this trip I had zero camera issues. Like not just like not having a camera not get destroyed, but I also didn't have to deal with any SD card issues after the trip as well. In 2021, I had one of my cameras get destroyed throughout the middle of the trip, and I didn't get to like have half the earlier like footage from like the earlier half of the trip because of that. And then in 2022, I didn't have like any camera issues on the trip, but like whenever I was like editing videos afterward, whenever I went to Kincaid Lake, I did have like run into like an SD card issue, and I had to like go like figure out how to take care of that on like the computer, and I had to like figure out how I could restore some of the files on that SD card because it ended up like getting damaged at Kincaid Lake. But at least like with the 2022 road trip, I was able to get the footage restored. I did have to like push back some of the videos towards the end of the vacation, but I was able to get restored, and I also didn't lose a camera, at least from that trip. So this trip I didn't have any issues at all, so that was really nice. Like I really did like that. I was able to do more per each day on this road trip than like either of the road trips, including 2022. I was also able to have more videos out on this trip than like either of the past road trips as well. I also had like the earliest start on like either of the leaving days on the road trip. I didn't end up hitting the road until like around 3 p.m. on the 2021 trip, and then in 2022 it was even later. I think it was like 4:30 or 5 o'clock before I actually hit the road. This year I got to hit the road around like before noon even, so this is like the earliest like start I had out of any of the road trips, so I really did like that. Not just that, but it was also the best first day out of the free road trips. Not just that, but like it was also the best last day I had too, because I didn't have to like dedicate 7 hours driving through Kansas, and I also got to see Milwaukee and Chicago on the last day before heading home, so it was nice getting to see Milwaukee for the first time. It was also the latest I got home out of the free trips. I think in 2022 I got home around 10 p.m. And then in 2021 it was like around 6 or 7 p.m. that I got home. So this time I didn't get home until midnight. So this was like the longest like last day I got to have to. I ended up like getting to see like a lot of nice waterfalls throughout upstate New York, Shenandoah, Newer Gorge. This is like the most amount of waterfalls I got to see out of any of the free trips, and getting to see like the Niagara Falls for the first time. This road trip also had like the best food opportunities out of any of the road trips I got to do. I got to have like a variety of different food. I got to like have some nice pizza experiences, like whenever I went to New York, and then a Connecticut place, and then in Chicago before going home. And then I got to try like some really nice like lobster in Maine, and ended up like getting to have like a lot of nice food on this trip compared to like the other two road trips. But it was also the most amount of states I had on any road trip. I ended up like getting to add 15 new states on this road trip. In 2021 I added 11 new states, and then 2022 I added like 4 new states. Although to be fair, like a lot of the 2022 road trip was going through some of the same states I did in 2021, but it also was still the least amount of states I was in. This one I got to add 15 new states and also a new country as well. So those are basically all the things I liked more about the 2025 road trip compared to like the 2022 and the 2021. So now for the next part of the video, I'm going to be naming some things I liked more about just the 2022 road trip compared to this one. I feel like the 2022 road trip had like the best hiking opportunities of the free road trips. This road trip still had a lot of nice hiking opportunities, especially doing the Beehive for the first time, but I think 2022 was just a little bit better though, getting to see like some of those Utah national parks and getting to see the Grand Canyon for the first time. I still did get to do a lot more hiking on this year's road trip compared to the 2021 road trip, but I feel like 2022 had the most hiking, so I feel like I had like a little bit more energy whenever I did the 2022 road trip compared to this year's road trip. But to be fair, this road trip I still had a lot more energy than I did on the 2021 road trip. It still was a lot better energy wise than on that road trip, but I feel like 2022 was maybe the best, like the most amount of energy that I had on any road trip I did. So I also feel like 2022 was like the best like experience I had with like lodging experiences, like checking in, checking out of hotels. The New York night was a little bit like frustrating, like the checking in experience was a little bit frustrating. It took a while to like get checked in that night, but other than that, I feel like it wasn't that bad with this trip. But 2022, it just like there was like absolutely no like struggle with checking in at all on that trip. Like regardless of like the New York night being kind of stressful, it still was a lot better than the 2021 trip, because on the 2021 trip I had that one night that I was getting out of Yellowstone where I just didn't book like anything ahead of time for Yellowstone. It also is possible I might be going back out there next summer, but for sure we'll be planning the lodging a lot like earlier in advance this time, like kind of like what I did with this year's road trip. Whenever like I was staying in Maine and all that, I planned everything ahead of time, and that definitely made things a lot better. And I planned everything ahead with New York and all that. So if I were to go back out there, I'm definitely going to plan to get lodging ahead of time at Yellowstone. That was one kind of mistake I made on that 2021 road trip, and I had to drive throughout the night because of that happening. So that was definitely the worst of the free road trips or lodging, but I think 2022 was the best. So those are the things I liked more about just the 2022 road trip. So now I'm going to be kind of naming some things I liked more about both of the road trips compared to like this year's road trip. So first thing I liked a little bit more about like both of the past road trips, I feel like this road trip had like the like least like good of the national parks I saw for the first time. I still really did like Acadia, but I just feel like both the 2021 and 2022 road trip I got to see like more national parks throughout those trips, and I also feel like they were just a little bit better on average. So 2022 was definitely the best of the three for national parks, so I feel like this year was the least best. So another thing I liked more about like both the road trips I did in the past, I feel like both of them had a little bit nicer nature scenery on average than like this year's road trip. Another thing I also liked more about like both the past road trips is like I got to experience like hot springs at least one time on both of them. In 2022 I got to experience it twice with like a big hot spring pool, and then going to like this one individual place, and then in 2021 I got to go to like an individual hot springs place. But this year I didn't really get to have that experience because like I was in the northeast part of the country and I couldn't really find any of that stuff around there. So, and then the last thing that I kind of liked more about like the past road trips is like during like both the road trips, I was like either in the Pacific or the Mountain time zone versus this one, I was in the Eastern time zone. So it was a little bit harder with like my sleep schedule and all that, and kind of made some of the mornings a little bit rough on this trip. But I mean, to be fair, I still feel like despite that, I actually did have a little bit of an easier time, like getting out of the hotels on average than in 2021, despite being like having a disadvantage for a time zone. But out of the free road trips though, I feel like 2022 was like when I was doing the best of like leaving the hotels. Like I feel like I wasn't leaving quite as early as 2022 and getting my day started because of like that disadvantage with the time zones. But even despite that, I feel like I was doing a little bit better in 2021. But I did like the time zone I was in on both the road trips more. So that was like the last major thing I liked more about like the past road trip. So basically gonna be moving on to like some of my favorite places I visited on this year's road trip. First place I really liked was New River Gorge, like the amazing rafting and ziplining experience I got to have, and then I also feel like it had a lot of like nice waterfall trails I was able to see, and then like that one Diamond Point area was a really nice view. So next place I really enjoyed seeing on this road trip was like the Cape Cod area and like the really nice beaches and lighthouses. So ended up like getting to have experience of like both like Atlantic Ocean beach and then also like the place I was staying at the hotel had like a little beach walk that I was able to go to like the Cape Cod Bay. So another place I really enjoyed getting to see on this road trip was Acadia National Park. In my opinion, it was probably my favorite of the national parks I got to see. Ended up like having a really nice like town, really nice food, and also really enjoy like the trails I did there. I think I picked some pretty good trails to do there for my time that I was there. Hoping to do the Precipice Trail if I ever go back there in the future, like maybe for a fall visit, but picked some really good trails while I was out there. I really enjoyed getting to see Ithaca Falls whenever I was in upstate New York. That was like the very first waterfall I saw that morning. Ended up like being a really short walk, and it was a really nice waterfall for being like pretty much almost at the parking lot. So really enjoyed that. And then like the last place I really enjoyed that stood out to me was Niagara Falls. Like just a really nice experience getting to be like in a different country for the first time, and then the waterfall was absolutely amazing there. It's probably the best waterfall I've ever seen. I mean, Multnomah Falls is probably a close second on the 2021 trip, but this is probably the best waterfall that I've ever seen. Really cool experience getting to like go like really close to the waterfalls and just really enjoyed the town area as well. So those are like the places I really enjoy on this road trip. So basically for the next part of the video, I'm gonna be moving on to like some things I wish I had done differently on this trip and some things I would do like if I were to do an East Coast trip in the future. So one of the things I kind of wish I had done differently on this trip was for like the last day of the trip, I wish I had spent more time in Milwaukee instead of like wasting my time like going back to try to see Chicago again and all that. I feel like I should just left it at like just seeing it briefly to go to a pizza place that Friday night and just focus on seeing Milwaukee like that last day and then just went straight home from there. I wish I had spent more time in Milwaukee instead of trying to see that fountain in Chicago again. So another thing that I wish I had done differently was like just not wasting my time trying to see Toronto and all that. I mean, it was nice to get to see it for the first time and say that I was able to like see like Canada's biggest city and see a major city in like a different country for the first time. But I just feel like overall it was just like a massive time investment and didn't really get to do a whole lot in the city. And maybe if I had like a little bit more time on the trip, it would have been a nicer experience. But I just feel like it was just like a really terrible time investment on the trip. Another thing that I would do differently is like if I were to go back to like New York City, I'd try to maybe like do like a boat tour of Ellis Island and get a closer, nicer up view of the Statue of Liberty, and then explore a little bit more of like Central Park and all that. I kind of wish I had more time and like I had spent more time in New York City and been able to do like some of that as well. But that's one thing that I'd probably try to do next time I would go out there. I'd also maybe try to like spend a little bit more time at Old Orchard. That was kind of like something I did at the last minute on the way like out of Acadia, but kind of wish I had spent more time there and done a little bit more, like done some of the rides there, even if it was like off camera and walked along the pier and all that. So, and the last thing that I would do differently is like skip the whale watching tour. I mean, it was nice getting to see it for like the first time, but I was like nauseous for all the tour and it did take out a good portion of the day. It was still nice getting to do like one and done, but I don't think I would do in the future though. And it wasn't the most enjoyable experience. So those are the main things I would do differently. Other than that, I think the trip went pretty well. So if I were to like say which of like the road trips I did was my favorite, I would probably have to say this one was slightly better than the 2022 trip, but I mean it's really close between those two. But this year and 2022 were a lot better than the 2021 trip. So best road trip I've ever done, with the 2022 being like really close second, and the spring break would probably be my third favorite trip I've ever done. So that's basically all I'm gonna be doing for today's video. So hope you enjoyed all the videos I filmed throughout the road trip, and I hope you enjoy like this little review video, like kind of going over like what some of my favorite moments were on the trip and some things I wish I'd done differently, and like also comparing it to past trips. So this is probably the best road trip I've ever done, and really grateful for everything that I've been able to see on this trip, and think it was like a really overall successful trip. So subscribe and keep my post notifications on, see what we do next. Stay tuned for like some Smoky Mountains fall like videos coming out soon, because I'm gonna be doing like another small fall getaway out there. So stay tuned for that, and without further ado, I'll see you guys next time.